how's it going, Pop-Up Camper family? Welcome back to It's Poppin' and welcome to our campsite. So in this video, we want to share with you our top 10 tips, tricks, and hacks that we've learned over the last so many years pop-up camping. These are some of those things that are like, oh yeah, I wish I knew about that from day one. These are some of those things that we incorporate a lot in our daily pop-up camping regimen. And it makes our life at the campsite a little bit easier. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So tip number one is to bring an extension cord. Now what we do is we run this extension cord directly to the shore power or the electrical box at our campsite. And that way, well, at least for this campsite, we're only using it for our kind of exterior lighting. We like to bring our rope lights and stuff. But where this comes in really handy is if you're trying to run a lot of high wattage or high amperage devices in your pop-up camper at once. So take our pop-up as an example. Maximum you can run in this is 30 amps. So for example, if you're running your air conditioner, which can draw up to 16 amps, you're already halfway done. Add on top of that your refrigerator and some other stuff, lights, you're getting up there. And now if you want to run another high amp device, let's say for example electric griddle or a coffee maker, well then you're getting dangerously close to tripping the breakers in your converter. So this is kind of a hack to bypass that, get a little bit more electricity while you're at your campsite. And we do this if we're bringing, like I said, our electric griddle or something and we're running our air conditioner at the same time. So that's hack number one. So for tip number two is your propane system. If you ever find that you're having trouble getting any of your propane systems to work, furnace, water heater, stove, things of that nature, and you know that your propane tanks are full, or at least should be mostly full, it may be because there are some safety check valves, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's one in the propane tank as well as perhaps a pigtail or somewhere down line. But there are some safety systems that if you open your propane tanks too quickly, it could essentially freeze them out. So what I encourage you to do is anytime you turn on your propane tank, just turn it on almost painfully slow, and that way you know you're not going to freeze out those check valves. And going along with that, I'll share a kind of a secondary tip to go along with this, but we'll go inside for that. Going along with opening your propane tanks slowly, the best thing to do when you're trying to get any of your propane systems working is to actually bleed out the air in your propane lines by using your stove. And that's because this is one of those items that actually pulls the most BTUs. So I just like to run it until you can hear that gas and make sure I'm lighting the correct one. But there, kind of bled out that air, make sure that's going. And now if you're wanting to get your hot water heater or maybe your outside lines running, you should be good to go. So this is something that I actually bought to do some future testing for the fridge, but it's actually turned out to be really nice in our day-to-day camping life. And that's just one of those indoor-outdoor thermometers. So what we do is we place our, I guess, outdoor portion of this thermometer in our fridge here. And that way, as you can kind of see, it tells us the exact temperature on the inside of our fridge. And I've actually found that our particular fridge gets pretty cold when we max it out at, I think, what is that, maybe 5 or 6, and it'll get below 30 degrees. So sometimes if we don't want our food in there to freeze, I'll have to back it down to, maybe 3 or something. So this is super nice for not only measuring the temperature within the fridge, but also, of course, if we set this outside of the fridge, it just gets that ambient temperature inside, which is nice for, kind of double checking if your air conditioner is doing a good job or if your heater is doing a good job, things of that nature. So it kind of has a dual purpose use for both the fridge and your pop-up as a whole. So tip number 4 is all about pop-up camper efficiency for us. So we like to use 3 different totes for, I guess it's just those items that have to come into the pop-up camper, but also have to come out when you're done camping. So let me explain, and I think you'll get more what I mean. So for example, here is our food tote for this weekend. We didn't have to bring too much because it's just a quick weekend trip, but sometimes we bring an even bigger tote, depending on how many people we're feeding, things like that. But what we do is we will take all of the ingredients, all of the dry goods that we need for the weekend, put them in our tote, and usually it rides with us in our tow vehicle. Then once everything's popped up, we can bring this in, and we actually store all of our dry goods in this drawer right here, and that way the tote can get off the counter. And now, for example, right now we're pretty much at the end of our trip. What we do is we take all of our dry goods back out, put them in the tote, along with any of the dirty dishes that we didn't get quite as clean as we want, you know, like our Blackstone spatula, things of that nature, that we can throw in the dishwasher at home. And then once we're ready to camp, all the dry goods go in here and then rinse and repeat. So that's our food and some of those dirty dishes that we want a little bit cleaner. Now on the flip side of that, for our clothing and bedding, we use these totes that I think we got from IKEA. They're really nice for, once again, we put all of our clean clothes, toiletries in one, and both Mrs. Poppin and I can fit all of our stuff into one. And then we also put all of our clean sheets and pillowcases in the other. So then once again, when the pop-up camper is popped up, we're able to take all the sheets out and put them on, get the beds all ready. And then as the week or weekend progresses, we can then take our clean clothes and put them in the dirties, and also take our dirty sheets and put them in there. Then they go out into the tow vehicle, rinse and repeat. So that is our tote system for efficiency, if you will. So for tip number 5, and this is actually a tip I've shared with you guys before in another previous video, but that is to tape some extra fuses within your converter. So for example, as you can see, we have a 40, a 30, and 3 15s. So I just use some painter's tape, tape some extra fuses right there. That way, if you ever blow any fuses, you have an extra at hand right there, and you're good to go. So that's tip number 5. So for tip number 6, we are at the front of our pop-up. Now, I'm sure many of you experienced pop-up campers have experienced when you get your coupler on your hitch, but your locking mechanism just does not want to get forced down. Now, believe me, we tried to replicate this, but we were having a heck of a time getting it to cooperate. We were, I guess, too good at hitching it. No, just kidding. But if you ever find that it seems like your coupler is on your ball, but this lock just won't go down like it's supposed to, what I recommend doing, and for tip number 6, I recommend just trying to rock your tow vehicle forward and back a little bit with maybe like a quick stop at either end. And then what happens normally for us is that it will coupler will slide under that ball, and then you should be able to pop your lock down and lock it up, so that way you're good to go. So for hack number 7, and I'm definitely going to call this a hack, this comes into play if you have a 7-way connector for your camper to your tow vehicle. And I also think you do need a battery. I've never tried it without, but essentially what you can do in lieu of hooking up your connector to your tow vehicle in order to test any of your auxiliary lighting, whether that's like the oranges on the side or even the reds on the back, is you can take any sort of conductor, but a blade fuse works really well, and you'll index it off this top part, and you just simply place the blade fuse right in to those, I don't know, 2 holes, and as you can see, I can effectively make the auxiliary lights on the pop-up turn on. So if you're replacing bulbs or anything and you don't want to hook up to your tow vehicle, this is a pretty handy hack. All right, so tip number 8, as you can see, we have our normal keys for everything we need on our camper. All the door locks, our hitch pin, all the door keys, all the hitch pin keys, front trunk keys, even an extra key for our battery disconnect. But we would be totally out of luck if we got to our campsite without these. We wouldn't be able to, I don't know, raise our roof. We wouldn't be able to open up anything. We'd be pretty screwed. So what we do, and tip number 8, is keep a spare set of keys within your glove box or somewhere in your tow vehicle. That way, if and when you get to your campsite without your primary set of keys, the trip isn't totally ruined. So that's tip number 8. So tip number 9, this is actually kind of a hack as well. But let's say you don't want to pull your giant 30 amp extension cord all the way to your garage, or maybe it doesn't even reach, but you have something that's a little bit lower amperage that will reach in lieu of your big one. Well, if you want to pre-cool your pop-up camper's 3-way refrigerator prior to departing on a trip, you can just simply unplug the plug-in right there and pop it into your smaller extension cord, and that will allow you to, like I said, run your refrigerator off 120 volt, 110, 120. So just kind of nice if you don't have the reach capability with your bigger cord. And finally, for tip number 10, and this also kind of falls in line with pre-cooling your 3-way refrigerator, but that is using simple ice blocks. And actually, in my opinion, freezing half-gallon water jugs, things of that nature, works even better. But this saves a lot of ice that you might have to buy from the store by pre-cooling your cooler. And then, you know, once it's time to pack up your cooler, you can just take these ice blocks and throw them back in your freezer and put your regular ice in here. Same thing goes with your 3-way refrigerator. All right, guys, so there's our top 10 tips, tricks, and hacks to make your pop-up camping experience better. I'm sure you guys have hundreds more, so please leave your favorites in the comments, the ones that made you say like, oh man, I wish I would have known that sooner. We love learning from you guys, so if there's any tips, tricks, or hacks, pretty wide range of things, right? But if there's anything that falls under those categories, definitely let us know in the comments. So as always, guys, hopefully we see you in the next video. If not, hopefully we see you out there camping.